Hello, it's DL here, and I have for you today breath practice, a technique that's really powerful. It is called Breath of Fire, and this particular version that I'm going to share with you is from the Kundalini Yoga tradition. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the differences that exist among practices that are referred to as Breath of Fire, depending on the tradition. And the first being Kapalabhati, which is a breath practice that emphasizes the exhalation and is very much like the Breath of Fire I'm going to teach you today. So there's that. There's also something called Bastrika or Bistrika. And Bastrika is an equal emphasis on the inhalation and the exhalation. And depending on who teaches you this, you might get a very different experience because the traditions vary. And I'm not going to go into that because it's not really relevant to the type of practice that we're doing. So if you want to know more about those two breath practices, you might have to do some of your own research in that regard, and you may very well find teachers teaching it in different ways, and it gets a little confusing. So we're just sticking to what I consider to be more the Kundalini approach to Breath of Fire, which it's really kind of starting from an exhalation. And the emphasis, when I say the emphasis, it's like you're not, and this is a misunderstanding a lot of people have with Kapalabhati too. Just because the emphasis is on the exhalation doesn't mean that you're not inhaling. And that's just a crazy, I don't know, something that happens in the brain when people learn it. They think, they're being told the emphasis is on the exhalation, and then they think they can't breathe in, and that's not true. The inhalation it replaces itself. If you're paying attention to your body and what your body wants to do, that will come quite naturally. Now, even within the Kundalini tradition, I noticed that there are slight variations among teachers. Some will say that it's equal emphasis on the in and out breath, and then some will say that it's that the inhalation takes care of itself, and even that is a little confusing. So for me, and the way I like to practice it is I'm not purposefully inhaling after I exhale in any really focused, intentional way. My inhalation is coming naturally because I just exhaled. So I know this might not be clear at first unless you've done it before, but with practice you will understand what I'm talking about here, and you can always refer back to this and check out your understanding at various points in your practice. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the best way to utilize this practice. What I would do if I were you is I would maybe work with a timer, maybe set it for just a minute, and then I would practice my Breath of Fire for a minute for that day, and then I'd forget about it and do a minute the next day, and so on for maybe a week, or until I felt like, okay, yeah, I'm getting the hang of it, I'm getting maybe a little more rhythmical. And then I would build up to 2 minutes, and then 3, and on up. And I think the most I've ever really felt the need to do is about 15 minutes with breaks in between. So, it's really up to you how deeply you want to go into this practice and for how long. Now, the other thing that I said that I took breaks. Sometimes when I work for bigger periods of time, like 15 minutes, I will do the breath work, and then if I start to feel like I'm pushing or I'm a little exhausted, I'll stop. I'll just breathe normally, take a little break, and then maybe after 30 seconds or a minute, I will start again within that 15-minute period. So don't feel like you have to push through a certain time. You can always break, and that goes for whether you're practicing for just a minute or, however long you've decided. The other thing, and this ties on to that, taking breaks, is that even though there's a rhythm that gets established, it's going to be your rhythm. It's not going to be my rhythm. It's not going to be, if you're following another instructor, it's not going to be their rhythm. It's going to be yours. So if you're just beginning, chances are your breath of fire is going to be slower in rhythm than someone who is more practiced with it. And it's really important to honor that, because you need to build up the muscle and not stress yourself. The thing that I see so often with people doing pranayama, breath techniques like this, is that they overexert and they get tense in their body, and that's not what it's about. It's about really letting go and de-stressing, detensing, and allowing the breath to come freely and to build up the muscles to do that so that it's effortless. What else do I need to say? There are contraindications for doing breath of fire, and the biggest ones probably are for women who are menstruating and pregnant women. You should not practice breath of fire, at least if you're on your period for the first few days or heavy flow. Allow that. The breath of fire is an activating energy. It's a upward rising energy. So if you have your period, you want that energy to be flowing downward, and that's why I don't suggest practicing it, and it's not recommended. And likewise, if you're pregnant, you don't want to have any pressure through the solar plexus area, the sacral area, and there is a little bit of a belly activation when you're doing breath of fire, which we'll talk about in a minute. So you won't want to be engaging that while you're pregnant. So in those instances, if something calls for breath of fire, or any of the voice work that we do together is, using breath of fire, then just do long, deep breathing instead. And that's perfectly harmless. So what else? Okay, so if you have, because I said it creates heat in the body, and it also kind of has this a bit of pressure. So if you have any kind of conditions that are related to pressure, blood pressure, glaucoma, a hernia, any of those kinds of things, then breath of fire, if done at all, and maybe it shouldn't be done at all, that's up to you and your doctor. But if you decide to do it, just do it really, really lightly and slowly. It can be done if you have heart conditions and can actually help for some people, but you need to really take care and make sure it's for you. And if you decide to do it, just take it easy. Go really slow, really gently. And really, that's really good advice, no matter what you're doing, is to go slow and gently, especially at first. Okay, so I think I've covered everything there that I need to. Let's talk about the practice itself. So the easiest way that I have to teach this is to think of a dog panting. And, in and out the mouth with the tongue hanging out. And I also like to have people make their little paws hang. And the reason for that is that it helps us to remember to relax. If we have the hands like this and we're letting them bounce with the breath, then we're reminding our bodies to just go with that flow. So let's just try this for a few seconds together. So just begin panting over your tongue. And maybe you're going slower than I am. Oh, there's a jet just flying overhead. I hope that didn't make too much of a noise. Anyway. So just continue panting. Notice how your belly is moving in and out with the breath. And that is something you'll want to pay attention to once we close the mouth and you are doing the actual breath of fire. So just take a moment now, just rest and sense any sensations in your body as a result of that practice. And what we'll do together now is we'll go into an actual minute-long practice. And again, your pace, not mine. I might be breathing. I'll try to go a little slower. If it's still too fast, don't worry about it. Go slower. If you want to go faster than I'm going, that's fine too. And what else? Okay, so really important to be sitting up as straight and tall as you can. So if you're sitting on the ground, like in easy pose with your legs crossed or on a cushion, just make sure your back is really straight. Likewise, if you're in a chair, make sure your hips are all the way back in the chair and that you're supported, or that you're leaning forward and just have your back straight yourself. What else? I think that's it, and I think we're ready to go. So let's all start with our paws up, nice and relaxed, and just begin panting over your tongue. Now close your mouth and continue through the nose. You can drop your hands and rest them in your lap. Again, the emphasis is on the out, the exhalation, but notice that the inhalation replaces itself. So take the time to do that, to let the inhalation come back. You can close your eyes if you want to. And we're about halfway there, so just a few more seconds here. Resting at any point you feel tired or stressed. And release, relax. So just close your eyes here. Get a sense of what you feel in your body, what sensations have arisen. Let your breath be normal now. Take a deep breath if that feels good. So now, one of the things that often gets added to a breath of fire practice is at the end of the practice, you would do a series of locks. And I haven't really gone into the locks, and I don't want to do that in this video. I just want you to focus on the breath of fire itself. But with, so you know for future reference, I'll just mention briefly. With the locks, it's simply squeezing. You would hold your breath in on the last breath, and then so you would take a deep breath in, hold it, and as you hold that breath, you would be squeezing up on the anus, the sex organs, and the navel, and then hold that breath, and then release, and that just locks in the energy. We'll talk about that another time. Okay, I think we're done. See you soon.